The death penalty in the United States. The death penalty, also known as capital punishment, is a legal form of punishment in the United States for certain serious crimes, primarily first-degree murder with aggravating factors. However, its use is highly controversial and varies widely by state, as some states have abolished it, while others continue to enforce it. Additionally, the federal government and military have their own capital punishment laws, which apply regardless of state policies. History of the death penalty in the U.S. capital punishment has been practiced in the United States since colonial times, with early executions carried out by hanging firing squads or other methods. In the 20th century, electrocution and gas chambers became more common before lethal injection was introduced as the primary method of execution. However, the death penalty has faced legal challenges, including the landmark Supreme Court case Furman v. Georgia, 1972, which temporarily halted executions nationwide due to concerns about arbitrary sentencing. The ruling led to reforms in state laws, and the death penalty was reinstated in Gregg v. Georgia, 1976. State versus federal death penalty. The death penalty is not applied uniformly across the United States. As of 2025, 23 states and the District of Columbia have abolished capital punishment, while 27 states still allow it. Some states, such as Texas, Oklahoma, and Florida, frequently carry out executions, whereas others, like California and Pennsylvania, maintain large death row populations but rarely execute inmates. At the federal level, capital punishment applies to crimes such as terrorism, espionage, treason, and certain forms of aggravated murder. The federal government has executed prisoners in recent years, though its use remains relatively rare compared to state executions. Methods of execution. Lethal injection is the most common method of execution in the U.S., but some states still allow alternative methods. These include electrocution, electric chair, legal in states such as Alabama and Tennessee, gas chamber, still an option in Arizona and a few other states, firing squad, recently reinstated in some states as an alternative, hanging, rare but still technically legal in New Hampshire. Many states have faced difficulties obtaining lethal injection drugs, leading to delays and discussions about alternative methods, controversies, and legal challenges. The death penalty remains one of the most debated issues in the U.S. Key concerns include wrongful convictions. Studies have shown that innocent people have been sentenced to death, leading to exonerations through DNA evidence and other means. Racial and socioeconomic bias. Critics argue that the death penalty disproportionately affects people of color and those without adequate legal representation. Cruel and unusual punishment. Some argue that botched executions violate the Eighth Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. Cost. The death penalty is often more expensive than life imprisonment due to state versus federal death penalty laws in the United States. The death penalty, also known as capital punishment, is a legal but highly debated form of punishment in the United States. While some states continue to enforce it, others have abolished it due to concerns about wrongful convictions, racial bias, and the cost of executions. In addition to state laws, the federal government and the U.S. military have their own capital punishment statutes, which apply regardless of state policies. The division between state and federal laws has led to significant legal and ethical debates about the future of the death penalty in the U.S. state death penalty laws. In the U.S., each state has the authority to determine whether to allow capital punishment. As of 2025, 23 states and the District of Columbia have abolished the death penalty, while 27 states still allow it. However, among those that permit it, several have not carried out executions for years due to moratoriums or legal challenges. States that allow the death penalty. Some states, such as Texas, Florida, Oklahoma, and Missouri, actively enforce capital punishment and frequently carry out executions. Texas, in particular, has the highest number of executions in modern U.S. history. Other states, like California and Pennsylvania, technically allow the death penalty, but have imposed moratoriums, meaning no executions are currently being carried out. States that have abolished the death penalty. Many states, including New York, Illinois, Colorado, and Virginia, have abolished the death penalty, citing reasons such as wrongful convictions, high costs, and ethical concerns. Some states have replaced it with life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Methods of execution at the state level. Lethal injection is the primary method used in most states that still have the death penalty. However, due to challenges in obtaining execution drugs, some states have reintroduced alternative methods, including electrocution, electric chair, used in states like Tennessee and South Carolina. Gas chamber, still an option in states such as Arizona. Firing squad, recently reinstated in some states, including Utah and South Carolina. Hanging, rarely used but still legal in New Hampshire under certain federal death penalty laws. The federal government has its own capital punishment laws, which apply to crimes committed under federal jurisdiction. This means that even in states that have abolished the death penalty, the federal government can still seek capital punishment for federal crimes. Crimes punishable by the federal death penalty. Federal capital crimes include acts of terrorism, espionage and treason, large-scale drug trafficking, murder of a federal law enforcement officer, judge, or witness murder committed during a kidnapping or human trafficking operation. Even if a state has abolished the death penalty, a person convicted of a federal capital crime within that state can still be sentenced to death and executed in a federal facility. Federal executions take place at the U.S. Penitentiary in Terre Haute, Indiana. After a 17-year hiatus, federal executions resumed in 2020, but have since slowed down again under the current administration military death penalty laws. The U.S. military has its own system of capital punishment under the Uniform Code of Military Justice, UCMJ. Military capital crimes include murder, treason, espionage, and desertion during wartime. While the military has sentenced individuals to death, executions are extremely rare. The last military execution occurred in 1961. Conclusion. The death penalty remains a divisive issue in the United States, with a complex legal landscape influenced by state, federal, and military laws. While some states continue to enforce capital punishment, many have moved toward abolition. At the federal level, the use of the death penalty fluctuates based on political leadership and legal challenges. The future of capital punishment in the U.S. remains uncertain as legal battles, public opinion, and ethical debates continue to shape the conversation. Crimes punishable by death in the United States. The death penalty in the United States is reserved for the most serious crimes, primarily first-degree murder with aggravating factors. However, federal law also allows capital punishment for certain non-homicide offenses, such as treason, espionage, and terrorism. The criteria for imposing the death penalty vary between state and federal jurisdictions, but all cases require due process and extensive legal review before an execution can take place. State-level capital crimes. At the state level, the death penalty is primarily applied to first-degree murder, also called capital murder, when specific aggravating circumstances are present. These circumstances vary by state, but commonly include multiple victims, killing 2 or more people in a single act or as part of a series of crimes, murder of a law enforcement officer, firefighter, or judge, targeting public officials in their line of duty, murder during the commission of another felony, also known as the felony murder rule. This applies when a killing occurs during crimes such as robbery, kidnapping, rape, or arson. Murder of a child, killing a minor, often with additional factors like torture or sexual assault. Murder for hire, contract killings where someone hires another person to commit the crime. Murder by a repeat offender, when a person with a prior murder conviction commits another homicide. Heinous, cruel, or depraved murder, cases involving extreme torture, mutilation, or prolonged suffering of the victim. Each state has its own laws regarding capital punishment, and some states have stricter criteria than others. For example, Texas and Florida frequently impose the death penalty for felony murders, while other states may reserve it for the most egregious cases. Federal capital crimes. At the federal level, capital punishment applies to a broader range of offenses beyond murder. Federal law includes the following crimes as punishable by death. 1. Terrorism-related crimes, acts of terrorism resulting in death, such as bombings, hijackings, or biological attacks that cause fatalities. Murder of a U.S. national abroad, if committed as part of international terrorism. 2. Espionage and treason espionage, providing classified military or national security information to foreign governments that could harm the U.S. treason, acts of betrayal against the United States, such as waging war against the country or aiding its enemies. Third, large-scale drug trafficking, running a major drug operation. Legal challenges and moratoriums on the death penalty in the United States. The death penalty has long been a subject of legal, ethical, and political debate in the United States. Over the years, courts have ruled on various aspects of capital punishment, leading to temporary bans, reforms, and moratoriums in several states. Legal challenges focus on issues such as wrongful convictions, racial bias, and the methods of execution, while moratoriums are often imposed by governors or courts to halt executions while these issues are reviewed. Constitutional challenges to the death penalty. The U.S. Supreme Court has played a crucial role in shaping death penalty laws. Key legal challenges have centered around whether capital punishment violates the Eighth Amendment, which prohibits cruel and unusual punishment, and the 14th Amendment, which ensures due process and equal protection under the law. Landmark Supreme Court cases. 1. Furman v. Georgia, 1972. The Supreme Court ruled that the death penalty, as applied at the time, was arbitrary and discriminatory, leading to a nationwide moratorium. This decision temporarily halted executions in the U.S. 2. Gregg v. Georgia, 1976. The court reinstated the death penalty, ruling that revised state laws with sentencing guidelines, bifurcated trials, separating guilt and sentencing phases, and automatic appeals reduced arbitrariness. 3. Atkins v. Virginia, 2002. The court banned the execution of individuals with intellectual disabilities, ruling it unconstitutional under the Eighth Amendment. Simmons, 2005. The court abolished the death penalty for juveniles under 18 at the time of their crime. 5. Glossop v. Gross, 2015. The court upheld the use of lethal injection, but allowed further challenges on specific drug protocols. 6. Bucklew v. Precythe, 2019. The court ruled that even if lethal injection causes pain, it does not automatically make it unconstitutional unless the prisoner can propose a less painful method. These cases highlight ongoing legal battles over capital punishment, particularly concerning fairness, humane treatment, and wrongful convictions. State moratoriums and bans on the death penalty. A moratorium is a temporary halt on executions, often imposed by a governor or state court, while concerns about the fairness or legality of the death penalty are reviewed. Some states have long-standing moratoriums, even though the death penalty remains legal. States with active moratoriums: California, 2019 to present. Governor Gavin Newsom declared a moratorium, citing racial disparities and wrongful convictions. California has the largest death row population, but has not executed anyone since 2006. Pennsylvania, 2015 present, Governor Tom Wolf imposed a moratorium, citing concerns over fairness and wrongful convictions. Oregon, 2011 to present. Governors have maintained a moratorium due to ethical and cost concerns. Some states with moratoriums eventually abolished the death penalty, such as Illinois, 2011, Colorado, 2020, and Virginia, 2021. Ongoing debates and future of the death penalty, legal and ethical debates surrounding the death penalty, continue in courts and legislatures. Some of the key issues include public opinion and abolition trends of the death penalty in the United States. Public opinion on the death penalty in the United States has shifted significantly over time. While capital punishment was once widely supported, concerns over wrongful convictions, racial disparities, and the cost of executions have led to declining approval and an increasing number of states abolishing or restricting its use. Despite this, Some states continue to enforce the death penalty frequently, creating a stark divide in how it is applied across the country. Public opinion on the death penalty. Historically, a majority of Americans have supported the death penalty, particularly in the 1980s and 1990s, when crime rates were high. However, recent surveys show a decline in support. According to the Pew Research Center and Gallup polls, public approval of capital punishment has decreased, with more Americans favoring alternatives like life imprisonment without parole. Several factors contribute to this shift. Wrongful convictions. DNA evidence has exonerated many death row inmates, raising concerns about executing innocent people. Racial and economic disparities. Studies show that people of color and those with inadequate legal representation are disproportionately sentenced to death. Cost. The death penalty is more expensive than life imprisonment due to lengthy trials, appeals, and housing on death row. Cruel and unusual punishment, botched executions, and concerns over lethal injection drugs have intensified ethical debates. While some still support the death penalty for heinous crimes, overall confidence in its fairness and effectiveness has weakened. Abolition trends. Across states. Over time, many states have moved away from the death penalty. As of 2025, 23 states and the District of Columbia have abolished capital punishment, while 27 states still allow it, though some rarely carry out executions. States that have abolished the death penalty. Recent states that have abolished the death penalty include Illinois, 2011, Connecticut, 2012, Maryland, 2013, Delaware, 2016, Colorado, 2020, Virginia, 2021, the first southern state to abolish capital punishment, states with large death row populations but few executions. Some states maintain a death penalty law but rarely carry out executions. California. With the largest death row population, over 700 inmates, California has not executed anyone since 2006. Governor Gavin Newsom declared a moratorium in 2019. Pennsylvania has a moratorium in place with very few executions in modern history. Oregon officially has the death penalty, but it has not been used for decades. States that actively use the death penalty. A few states continue to enforce capital punishment frequently. Texas, the leader in executions, responsible for over 570 since 1976. Oklahoma has one of the highest per capita execution rates. Florida, one of the most active death penalty states, especially under tough-on-crime policies. Missouri frequently carries out executions compared to other states. Future of the death penalty in the U.S. With declining public support, legal challenges, and increasing exonerations, the future of the death penalty remains uncertain. While some states continue to enforce it, others are moving toward abolition or indefinite moratoriums. Federal executions have also slowed down, reflecting broader national debates on justice and human rights. The trend suggests that more states may abolish the death penalty in the coming years, making it a less common form of punishment in the U.S.